So welcome everyone to our Reaching Seekers as the Doors Reopen. We're going to basically be talking through the process. We're not going to dictate to you some strategies that you should take. What we're going to do is talk to you about, we're not going to talk specifics, except for Doug's going to give some examples, but we're going to talk about the process you go through to evaluate how it will work for you to reach the seekers that are in your sphere. Reminder that this is a webinar. I think everybody here has been on here enough, but it's a webinar, so put your questions in the chat. And remember, if you want everything to be seen by everyone, you want to choose on the to line, all panelists and attendees. If you just want us to see it, then you choose all panelists on your to. So, but that being said, let's go ahead and share some information. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, get back to my thing, the religious landscape in the United States, particularly the seeker landscape in the United States. So when we look at the statistics of who considers themselves spiritual but not religious, so they're open to being part of church, or they're at least open to talking about God. Of the landscape across the United States, those that are 18 to 29 years old, 29% of people identify as SBNRs. Of the 30 to 49-year-olds, 30% identify as SBNRs, and of the 50 to 64-year-olds, 29% identify as SBNR. So basically, everyone from 18 to 64, roughly a third of the population, is open to, like I said, understanding God, open to the spiritual world, but don't necessarily have connections with the religious side of things. Some of those SBNRs are in church, so there are some that are in there. They just identify as SBNRs, but a good many of those are not in church, but they are interested in it. And then for those that are 65 and up, then it's 17%. So a little bit smaller percentage there, but still a significant percentage of the U.S. population has an interest in God, but maybe not necessarily a religious affiliation. Okay, so and then the next piece is I wanted us to look at our top religious affiliation in Arkansas. So Methodists bring in 7.7% of the church, or of the population. 7.7% of the population identifies Methodist. 8.1% identify as non-denoms. I bet a lot of us in our church feel like that number is bigger, but it's not. Sometimes we feel that way because that's the big church in town, but they're not really drawing overall that many more people than we are. Catholics are coming in the 15% range, 15.7%, and then Baptists are at 19.1%. That probably doesn't surprise a whole lot of us on the ground either. Now here's the big one. No religious affiliation in Arkansas is 25.2% of the population. If you add in those that specifically identify as spiritual but not religious, that's a smaller number for us in Arkansas than it is across the nation. But if you add that in, it's 28.2% of the population has no religious affiliation, which is a huge mission field for us to look at. Now, I also want us to consider what has happened to our churches. We mentioned this a little bit in the relaunch webinar. This comes from the work of Kerry Newhoff. He wrote an article about this, about the growth due to the pandemic. But I will say, I tracked his research. As a scholar, what can I say? I want to make sure I know where everything came from. And these come from Google Analytics and some other analytics that are tracking attendance and traffic online. So 49% of all churches are now growing and have seen a spike in interest and engagement compared to 8 to 15% the month before quarantine. So we boomed all of a sudden with quarantine. And there was a spike at Easter. That was when the interest was at the highest, but overall interest is still up. It's starting to taper down, which means that we really need to up our engagement at this point to grab those folks and hold on to them and keep them as part of that, keep them interested. But I also noticed when I tracked that research is that according to Google, Arkansas is number 7 in the nation in online church searches and interest. Now this would be people that Google for online church. So wouldn't necessarily pick up your people who probably know to just go to your Facebook page. That's not going to be a Google search. So these are new folks out there looking, primarily new folks out there looking for a way to connect with church. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and now turn it over to Amy to talk a little bit about what this means for what happens if we don't keep engaging.
Let me get there, you know, technology and all. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, we're mainly focusing on that seeker audience that we have developed over the last 6 to 8 weeks during this pandemic. And I think we all can say that we've been a little surprised at how easy it is to reach this audience by using digital online technology. So we're going to take that a little bit further today. We're going to talk about some strategies and a few models on how to, when the doors of the church open again, how to not just forget that we've created this new audience and not have the mindset that, oh, these people are automatically going to just start getting up on Sunday mornings and coming to our building. And I want to share very clearly from the beginning that we need to have the mindset that this new audience, this new online audience, may never enter the doors of your church, ever. And if we look at it as the fact that we're creating, we're planting a whole new church with this group of seekers online is a great way to look at it. Michelle referenced Kerry Newhoff, and I'm going to reference him as well because I think he's just incredible with his leadership strategies. But thinking that in-house worship and online worship are it has to be one or the other is so wrong, and that we need to find a way to incorporate both, but with the understanding that both may never coincide. We have to understand that from the beginning, that both of these audiences may never coincide together. So anyway, with that said, I'm gonna share with you a model that we use in public relations. And first of all, let's go ahead and define what a seeker is. A seeker is someone who is trying to find something. And based on the course title today of what we're doing on this webinar, our first example of our vision, we're going with just examples today because this is not a template for churches, because every church is different and every one of your goals it might overlay, but yours needs to be authentic and intentional for your church and for your community. And so we're just going to create examples today. So the first example that, based on the title of this webinar, was our goal with creating a campaign with our new seekers is to grow in relationship with those who lack deep connection with a church community. Okay, that's a great goal. Good goal to start with, at least. So we're going to now introduce, so we'll remember that. We're going to introduce the RPI model, if I can, well, let's see. For some reason, it's not. There we go. RPI model. It begins with research, planning, implementation and evaluation. And understand that this model is not a circle. It is you must start with research and you must end with evaluation. Now there can be some there can be a little bit of evaluation through this and a few alterations in focus depending on what you might find out from your research. But all in all, this model, the order is very, very important of how this should go. And it's a very successful model that PR practitioners use in creating and implementing successful strategic campaigns. So let's all we're going to just jump right in. I know this is what everyone's thinking. Because this is where my mind goes as well. Anytime someone mentions RPI, I immediately go to pie. So I had to include a vision of a lovely pie. Has nothing to do with this webinar except for just yum, and wouldn't that be fabulous with a cup of coffee? So moving on. So starting with research, that is the first part of the model, and it is probably the most tedious part and one of the most important parts of creating a strategic campaign that will be successful. So many times in churches and other organizations, we have an idea of something we want to try that is based on our idea or our need, or what one person has said to us, or what the church across town is doing, or what another small business is doing. And where this sometimes fails is that we haven't taken the time to research this. We haven't taken the time to research who we're wanting to create this event, this campaign, this message for, to which today are seekers. We are going to research the seekers that we have developed from our new online ministries. So the research starts with, who are these seekers? What are they seeking? Why are they seeking? Where are they seeking, and when are they seeking? And, again, this goes back to the fact that we are trying to find out about our audience where they are. We are not trying to say, come to us. We are going to them, but we have to we have to do the research to figure out, where are they? What do they like? What are they interested in? What do they want as far as spiritual guidance and spiritual connection? And when is the best time to engage, and how is the best time to engage? And all of this information can be found in different tools like Mission Insight, your Facebook analytics. If you are sharing information about your website with your seeker audience and they are clicking, there is a click-through rate that you can see. What is it that people are most interested in? I mean, an old-fashioned research, well, I say old-fashioned, but, you can go to these people's Facebook page and see what other groups they follow. Are they all, is there a consistency of people who like coffee houses? Is there a consistency of people who like music? Dig in, research, and create these pieces that help this audience, so that you are setting them apart from what you want or what your leadership team wants, and knowing what they want, so that then later in the process, you're going to be able to reach them better. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle now, and she's going to share some more tactical data gathering tips.
Thanks. Can you unshare your screen, Amy, so I can share mine? Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So I'm going to show a few examples. And again, we just want to reiterate that this is not with the intention of getting folks to come in your doors, but this isn't with the intention of tracking who is already engaging with you. You have this online presence now. We need to have a sense of who is out there and be able to actually engage with them directly. Again, you can sort of stalk them on Facebook as they like your church and you friend them back or that sort of thing. But there are also other ways that you can gather information about them as well. One is to offer them something that ties into your church and gives you the ability to engage with them on a more consistent basis. Doug's going to talk the example about Right Now Media in just a minute here, but Amplify is really the same thing as Right Now Media is, except it's a very Methodist-driven option. It's put together by Abingdon Press, and so it really has good, solid Methodist curriculum available to it. But you can offer folks, hey, if you're joining us online, we'd love to offer you this membership to Amplify. You just need to get a church membership to do that, and if you can see on the amplifymedia.com, they have information on their pricing. So you can go out and find out, and it's based on how many folks engage in your worship typically. So what your average attendance is, that frames the cost of it. So I invite you to look into Amplify as an option of something that you can give to folks and then have them tied into your online community through those resources. You can also offer to send them a free gift of a devotional, get them to sign up for a devotional, that sort of thing, and that will keep them engaged and give you a little bit more of their information. You can have people sign in and register for worship. That's another way to track people. You can see if you go to I just knew that Conway had this out there. They have just a place where you can record your attendance that kicks over to a Google form. I will say this is most effective if it's mentioned in the course of your worship service. If you say, hey, we love that we've got folks out there joining us online. We would love to connect with you, engage with you, find out what you need and what your interests are. We have an online registration. Please go and fill that out. Doesn't have to be high pressure, but it's good to mention it, because if it's just there, people won't necessarily see it. But just be consistent about mentioning it, and when people are ready to engage on that level, they'll share that information. Then there were a couple of other churches out there that were really doing this well. St. Luke's has moved. Their homepage is all an online campus, and you can see that you can volunteer, you can ask for help. You can give, you can engage in virtual discipleship, you can click on worshiping live with them. And as you scan down, you can see you can click here to learn how to be a member if you want to. You can engage in the daily devotional. They've got a whole sense of this being their community. And I hope that they don't drop this, right? They have space to sign up for devotionals and emails and a prayer request. And then they have a space to register your attendance, which just kicks you over to just a kind of quick fill in, I was here. But they've made it really, really easy to interact with. And then LaCroix Church is also a United Methodist Church. They're using the church online platform, which if you go to churchonlineplatform.com, you can find out information. It integrates things like text chat. It will send you automatic text reminds that worship is about to start. So you just click on it and it takes you right in there, takes you right into a chat. And it was very engaging chat. I signed up for this week and got in there and chatted with folks. And they did engagement pieces like asking, hey, where's everybody coming to us from? And it was all over the United States. And just chatted, asked different questions in the course of the chat. They did open it up for prayers, but a lot of times people don't want to start out sharing prayer requests, but they'll share other things about their life. So if you can just ask those kind of good, common questions to invite people to share information about their life, that will help you start to gather information about who your seekers are and how they're joining you and where they're joining you from, right? They can be honestly coming from all over the United States. Once you've gathered some data, if people have started to share, you can use things like SurveyMonkey. You can send emails out and use MailChimp metrics, and you can engage through Facebook and use those metrics as Amy mentioned. And that'll give you a kind of fuller sense of who your people are that are joining you online, and how they're willing to share their data and what their engagement will be. So Doug now is going to share with us a little bit about how this has worked in his.
Right. So one of the ways that that we have been kind of using some of the tools that Michelle and Amy have talked about, we do our service on. We actually posted on Saturday night. It's off of YouTube, and the first thing we say on our video is we welcome everybody to church, and we say we especially want to welcome our visitors. And if you're joining us for the first time, we want to offer you a gift. We want to give you something just for tuning in today. And there's graphics that show up on the screen that tell them to text "Right Now Kibler" to 41411. And when they do that, it takes them to a Right Now page where they can sign up with their email address, and then they have a subscription like they would have to like Netflix or Hulu or some other streaming service. We're able to then get their information and find out what if they're interacting with that tool, which is also what we use for our discipleship online. And so it's one way to quickly kind of get them integrated to something that they'll be familiar with, and hopefully it becomes less intimidating for them to want to join a group online. But when we have their email address, we're able to send them that information. We do that through MailChimp, which is a free service. If you send, I think, less than 500 emails a month, and then it goes up in prices, but it's really inexpensive. MailChimp allows you to make really good marketing emails that send out to whoever's email address you have. You can actually look at the metrics of that to be able to find out who exactly is opening it. So that's how we knew that this was effective using Right Now Media, because we could see new people signed up, and then we could put their email addresses in MailChimp and find out if they're opening the emails, and then we could also find out what information they were interacting with on that email. So one of the things we did for one of our seekers was we gave them the invitation. They signed up for Right Now Media. We gave them an email where it had information about a small group, and they came to the small group. And this all happened online. So it was a great tool for us. We were finding out about Amplify right as we began doing this. When I looked at it more, I think Amplify is just as good, if not better, because we actually do have to go on and manually take out some content on Right Now Media, because it's just not appropriate for our theology. But Amplify, I don't think you'd run into any of those issues.
Good deal. Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit now about refining that initial goal. We talked about that. The initial goal that we had set was growing in relationship with those who lack deep connection in a church community. So let me share my screen here. Share screen. Okay. Sorry. I'm on the wrong page. Forgive me for just a second. Let me catch up here. So, okay. So we're talking about our initial goal was to grow in relationship with those who lack a deep connection with a church community. And now that we have completed all of this research, we really can micro-target and refine that goal. And I have created a couple of examples here. So instead of just growing in relationship with those who lack deep connection with the church community, we could possibly refine it to continue to grow in connection with seekers aged 31 to 50 years who desire to grow closer to God. So this goal says a lot. We've been able to identify that this is a large age group in our new online audience. We've also been able to identify that this group is not necessarily religious, but more interested in a relationship with God. So that is going to really alter how we plan a specific event or campaign to grow in connection with them, because it may not be inviting them to the church building. If they are wanting to grow closer to God, it may be sharing the Amplify piece. It may be just putting more information out there for them and letting them organically get there, and also being very conscious of the fact that they may not ever make it into the church building. So another goal that we might be able to, this is just an example from research, is that we might be able to say, okay, we're going to refine our goal to continue to grow in connection with seekers aged 50 plus who do not attend in-person worship. If we've figured out in our research that this is our audience and that they are not interested in attending church, just think about the messaging is going to be so much different than for that first goal of grow in relationship with those who lack deep connection with the church community. Think about if you know that your audience is over 50 years old and they do not attend in-person worship, don't really show much interest in it, your messaging is going to be so much more targeted and specific and intentional with this group. So another example, narrowing it down even further, is another goal could be continue to grow in connection with seekers who are aged 18 to 30 who desire a connection through community missions. Wow. So, okay, that's a total different intentionality there. That shifts our focus, but this is very targeted for that audience. This is our largest audience that we have online. We have figured all of this information out from our research, and now we have created a very targeted goal that we can mold and plan and implement into being more successful in reaching this group where they are. I hope that makes sense. So let me see what's next. Okay. So any questions? Michelle, does anyone have any questions yet? Okay. So when you're doing this, when you're creating your goals and when you are doing the research and beginning to enter into the planning phase, which is next, be aware that you need to remain authentic and understanding who your church is, your church's mission, who you are, is so important, that everything you do and everyone you reach and every message that you send still needs to roll up under that. So where we make a lot of mistakes these days is trying to be everything to everyone. And we have people that say, well, this is going really well across town, I think we should do it. Or I heard that, someone in Kansas City is doing this, so maybe we should try this. Well, there needs to be the research. Does this fit our mission? what is our end goal? Michelle's going to talk about SMART goals in just a minute, but I just want to reaffirm for you that you need to stay authentic to who you are and not try to be things that you're not, and not try to sell people on everything, because you're going to have people that just leave the shopping cart and walk away. So we're going to move a little bit into planning now, and I do apologize that my slides are a little out of order. Doug, did you want to share anything about knowing who you are and being authentic?
Yeah, that resonates with me because if any other pastors tuning in are like any other churches, I mean, there are just some things that we have to acknowledge that we are not going to be able to do. Our resources don't allow it. Our demographics don't allow it. So, for instance, at Alma United Methodist Church, we have a much older congregation who are empty nesters or retirees, and we don't have any children unless my kids show up. And so, we may have to just acknowledge from the get-go that, if we're online, we don't want to be presenting ourselves as having this thriving children's ministry and trying to reach all these families online with the hopes of selling them a bill of goods. We just need to embrace what we know we're good at and play to our strengths. So if we're great at reaching older folks, then that's who we reach online. Let's make that our commitment, and let's just continue to grow that presence there, because they're going to want to connect with other people in your church. And if they do that online, you've invited them in. You're not, to use an online term, you're not catfishing them. Don't be a catfish church. Don't pretend to be something you're not.
Very good. Very good. Totally. You nailed it right there. So we're going to move on to planning. The second part of the RPI model. And this is when you have collected all of your data. You know this audience frontwards and backwards, and you are ready to, you have your goal for this campaign of reaching this audience, and you are ready to start planning. So this is when you probably want to bring in a planning group. And so, I would recommend that your planning group be similar in age, likes, experience as the group that you are also targeting. But with that said, let me be very firm in saying to stay strong to the data you have collected from your research, and remember that this is not what you want, and this is not what your leadership team wants. This is what your seekers want. We are creating a campaign to take to them where they are. So, so you're planning. All throughout the planning, you need to ask, does this align with our church's overall mission? Does this align with our campaign goal? We've said we are going to try